Well, good evening. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, parents, students, and dedicated advocates. Welcome to the Atlanta Leaders for 100% Literacy Community Forum. I'm Kevin Murriel. I have the honor of serving as a senior pastor here at Cascade United Methodist Church, and welcome to Cascade Midtown, one of our two locations. We are so glad to host this forum on tonight. On behalf of the many parents, business leaders, religious, and civic leaders who have committed to this effort, we gather tonight with a profound sense of purpose, recognizing the critical juncture at which our city stands regarding literacy. Atlanta, like many urban centers across the nation, faces, as we all know, a literacy crisis, a crisis that not only impedes individual potential, but also threatens the very fabric of our community's future. The urgency of now compels us to unite, to act decisively, and to commit ourselves to the pursuit of ensuring that every Atlantan, especially every child, has the opportunity to read, to write, and to thrive. As leaders and as parents, influencers, and change makers, each of us has a moral imperative to address the challenge head on for the benefit of current and future generations. And so I'm excited because this evening we will hear critical information about how it is possible for us to reach our goal of double-digit literacy outcomes and gains in the next 1 to 3 years. We gather here in person, but there's also a virtual audience that we want to welcome into this space with us. We are so grateful for each of you who are tuned in from here locally and across the globe. And so at this time, I'm elated to introduce my friend and co-chair of the Atlanta Leaders for 100% Literacy movement, Nancy Flake Johnson, who is the CEO of the Urban League of Greater Atlanta, to bring greetings. Let's welcome Nancy as she comes.
So good evening, everyone. Really, Kevin has really said it all. But I want to put things in perspective. We're here all tonight because we know how important literacy is to the foundation of every single life. And for all of the resources and effort that we're putting into literacy, we're just not seeing the results that have to be achieved. And so we're excited to partner with Atlanta Public Schools, the board, the leadership, who are all of us on the same page that literacy has to rise to the top in terms of immediate priorities. So as of 2022, which are the most recent NAEP scores, it states that really 89% of Black students are not reading proficiently by 4th grade. 91% of the students on free and reduced lunch are not reading proficiently. 35% of white students are not reading proficiently, and 71% of Latino students. Even 35% is unacceptable, but 91%, what type of future does a child have if they can't read proficiently by 4th grade? Now, why is 4th grade the pivotal benchmark? Because that's when children are supposed to stop learning to read and start reading to learn. So those formative years are critical to the future of our children's education and the quality of their life. But it's not just about our children. It's also about our parents, our families, our adults we have 800,000 illiterate adults in metro Atlanta. That's unacceptable. Adults who are working every day, working hard for their families, but opportunities await if we can expand our resources for them. And I want to give a big shout out to APS for your incredible announcement last week about your expansion of services to adults through your adult literacy program. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. Urban League is a huge partner and referral resource for adult basic education for the clients and families we serve. So tonight, we have an incredible opportunity. We know for a fact that any child, regardless of race or economic background, can learn to read. The evidence is clear. If the science of reading methodology is incorporated, it works. And so if we already know how to do it, then we need to do it with urgency. And the good news is Atlanta Public Schools has already started this work. We are grateful for that. It's in 8 schools. It's going to expand. But as we embark on the selection of a new superintendent, we felt it's critically important that we support the board to select a leader who will prioritize literacy and double-digit gains. Double-digit gains are all that could possibly be acceptable at this point. And here's the good news. It can be done because it's being done in Marietta Public Schools, and we have the incredible opportunity tonight to hear how it's happening in Mississippi. So without further ado, I'm gonna keep the program moving. I'm excited to be here tonight to hear from Kristen and learn about from all of their journey to get where their achievement at this point. And it is my honor and pleasure now to introduce Erica Mitchell, who is the newly elected chair of the Atlanta Public School Board. And she is a literacy advocate, so thank you. Come on up, Erica.
Good evening. First of all, I would like to recognize my board colleagues that are here in attendance. Katie Howard, District 1. Ken Zeff, District 3. Also, City Council Member Matt Westmoreland, and former school board member. I would also like to recognize Dr. Battle, our superintendent, who's here this evening, and Sherry Forrest, who is also here with her as well. Thank you. Thank you, Nancy Flake Johnson, Kevin Murriel, Carmer Yates, Dr. Ryan Lee James, for engaging with us and allowing us to share this space with you all. I would like to also thank Atlanta Leaders for 100% Literacy, because without you all in this collaboration and this fight to ensure that everyone can read, we can't do it alone. But I would like to take a moment just to talk about why literacy is so important. It has always been important. Reading, education, literacy all goes together. It's a human rights, it's a civil rights, and that should not be denied for anybody in this entire world. But it's up to us as a school board and a governing body, it's up to us as an administration, a community, and parents to ensure that all of our students learn how to read. Because reading will open up these doors to life, to create a better space, a better education for your family, a better job. It helps you navigate through this world. And so, as a board member who advocated for a literacy policy and had the opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Ryan Lee James to write the policy, and I would be remiss if I did not recognize Tamara Jones, who's our former board member, who pushed that literacy efforts. And I just want to share what is important to the Atlanta Board of Education regarding literacy. In support of student success, the Atlanta Board of Education recognized the importance of literacy. Therefore, the Atlanta Board of Education ensured that Atlanta Public Schools address the literacy crisis and the equity gap for students, including those who have been historically disenfranchised, including African American students, multilingual students, and children from low socioeconomic backgrounds. In addition, with the policy, the literacy policy that we approved will focus more broadly on students who are not meeting the grade level in proficiency and expectations. The Atlanta Board of Education and the Atlanta Public Schools have established goals and strategies to address literacy challenges in our district. And when we talk about goals, we're talking about the student outcome focused governance framework that we have established as a board to ensure that we focus on the outcomes of students. And with our goal 1, which is our literacy goal, focus on a subgroup of students. But as my colleague Katie Howard would say, we're going back into the community, we're gonna re-engage, and we're gonna narrow down those targets so that we can ensure that we focus on the students who most need the support around literacy. Thank you for that. But as we continue in the work, we have to make sure that we all show up to do our part. And that's why you are here today, because this is important to you. This is important work for our city and the future of our city. As I would say, get back to the basics, meaning what I would call my 4 R's, because I add an additional one. The first one is reading, writing, arithmetic, and resolution. And these are the basic life skills that we could really foster and hone in on the success of our students. But again, we can't do it alone. And so I just want to take a moment to thank everyone again in helping us with this work and working in partnership with us. But I also would like to take a moment to give you an update, as my dear friend Kalma Yates asked me to do. As you know, Atlanta Public Schools is in the superintendent search. And I might get a little teary-eyed because Dr. Battle, sorry. I mean, it's tears of joy and happiness because she was able to come back out of retirement off her cruise and said, I will come back for the students. I will come back for the students. And it's been so refreshing with you and your team, and Sherry, you're just a jewel too. To see how you really care about our students. It doesn't matter what side of town they live on, what race they are, whether their parents are literate or not, you truly care about these students. And I've been on this board for 6 years. And I've never seen anyone with a bigger heart than you all have. So thank you. And I don't want to see you leave. I know you're not staying, and I understand. So I get that, but just thank you. Thank you for leading this effort, for believing in what we wanted to accomplish as a board, and implementing that in the schools. Thank you. So going into the superintendent search, it's bittersweet. We have done a couple of things thus far. We are at the process where this month, February, we will start reviewing applicants that applied for the superintendency. At the end of the month, we will choose the applicants we would like to bring back for interviews. And in March, we will start the interview process of those applicants. Then we will go into what we call our sole finalists. And a lot of people understand how that works. So we can only bring in one sole finalist that we will select and come to a consensus as a board who that sole finalist is before they are sworn in as superintendent. They have to go through a 14-day vetting process required by the state law of Georgia. And so then you there's a lot of community engagement. There's a lot of engagement around that one candidate, the sole finalist. And so you'll have an opportunity to meet with the finalists. You'll have an opportunity to engage, to ask questions, to give feedback, input, whatever it is, for 14 days during that time period, even afterwards. But we get to that point, then we will vote on that candidate between March and April, depending on how long the other processes and the phases take. And then that superintendent will transition and be sworn in July 1st. And so that's where we are in the process. So this month, we are focused on doing interviews and selecting those candidates we want to bring back for interviews. And that's where we're going to focus on for the month of February. So I just wanted to share that information with you all. We will have more updates coming soon. I know we haven't heard a lot of information about it because we haven't done anything since we closed the application process. So I just want to give you that update. And just know that there will be engagement for all of you to take part in because we want you to be at the table. We want to hear your input. We want to know what you're thinking. We want your feedback, recommendations, anything that you want to provide for us with our candidate, because that superintendent serves the whole community, our students, our families, the city of Atlanta. So it's important to have you at the table in this process. So I just want to say thank you all, and I'm going to stop talking because it's taking too long, and I'm going to step off.
Thank you so much. You know, we absolutely must hear from our interim superintendent. Can we please welcome Dr. Battle to come and offer remarks? Come on, we can do better than that. Can we please give her a round of applause?
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
We tried.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I want to thank Dr. Murriel and Ms. Flakes Johnson for being the leaders in galvanizing our community, because this is what Atlanta needs. Also, I want to thank Homer Yates and Ryan Lee James, because within my first week after they heard my coming in speech, they knew literacy was going to be the focus. And I say it's a small world because when I first came to Atlanta, Cascade of all people, when I first came to Atlanta, one of your members hired me. I'm going to talk about it a little bit because I see her in the audience. When I first came to Atlanta, I was a principal in North Carolina. My husband's job came here, and I had met this lady once before because her mother was a volunteer at my school. Her nieces and nephews were at my school. And I can remember this tall lady with blonde hair coming in my school, looking at the boards, checking everything out. We were talking about integration and everything, and that was Dr. Patterson. So Dr. Patterson, thank you for hiring me when I came to Atlanta Public Schools and supporting me and helping me to grow even more. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank our board chair as well as our board members that are here as well. Please know that literacy takes all of us. It's going to take all of us to get this work done. When I was asked to come back to Atlanta Public Schools, when I got the call, I was like, and people say I was retired. I really wasn't retired. I was retired from Atlanta Public Schools. I was working for the Department of Education. But Atlanta Public Schools is where the children are. Atlanta is a place that produces a lot of great people. And we don't want to stop now. I truly believe in our students. I'll fall down on the sword because I know that our students can learn if given the opportunity. When I came in, and Comer was like I said, was one of my first meetings here in Ryan Lee James, we talked about, literacy. He was like, oh, you're serious about this. I can tell, because I said it is the priority. And I know he's been working with Atlanta Public Schools for many years, but I said it's a new day. This is our focus. We won't turn back. It's going to be costly, but it will be cheaper than letting our kids live unemployed in the prison system, dead, just not producing for Atlanta. So as I said, it's going to take all of us. I see some parents in the back, Miss Dobbs, and I'm looking at my Atlanta Thrive mom that always calls me. They're always saying, Dr. Battle, we aren't doing what we're doing, what the right thing by all children. And I said, we're working on it. We're going to get there. We are going to get there, but it takes all of us. No matter what side of town you're on, we need your support in this work. It has to happen. We always hear about Atlanta being a great city. We have the busiest airport, the busiest and most efficient airport in the world. Why can't we be the city that have the most literate people, especially people of color, because this is a progressive city? Do I think it can happen? Absolutely. Absolutely. This is the city that led the civil rights movement. This is the city where it all happens. There's no, and I keep saying, there's no reason. We have the resources, we have the people, we have the training coming to our teachers in Atlanta public schools. We have 8 schools that are constantly being trained, but we're getting this to other staff and adults that are going to work directly in schools, supporting schools, starting the end of the month. We have to do it. The time is now to strike. If any city in the United States can do it, Atlanta can do this. And for you being here tonight, it lets me know that you're interested, because you know we're all going to get older one day, and we're going to need some young bodies to take care of us. And we don't, and we need some literate kids to take care of us. But not only do we need literacy kids, we're working on the adult side too, so we're coming from both ends. We can't let our parents, the ones that are adults now with children, stay uneducated. It amazes me every year that we still have so many kids that stand up at graduation and they say, I'm the first generation graduate. Just come to any Atlanta Public School graduation, you will see that. So the tables are turning. And my job is to make sure when I walk out the door, whenever that is, whenever that is, that we have a superintendent that's going to keep this train moving in the right direction. And I appreciate all the parents, all the community members, our board members holding me accountable for that work. But no, it is a group effort. It is a group effort. So before I leave, and I feel like a preacher now, I'm going to need your time, your talents, and your treasures. Because it's going to, as I said, it's going to be costly. But we have to make sure that we stay the course. We have to stay focused. In our board meeting Monday night, I told the board members, we got to do this. It wasn't about literacy, it was about staying focused, because there are a lot of distractors out here. We have a lot of distractors in the schools, outside the schools, pulling on people. We need this, we need that, we need this. We need literate kids in Atlanta Public Schools, and it's about to happen. So thank you so very much, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Dr. Battle, I want to say on behalf of all of those who are here this evening, and on behalf of certainly our church and everyone who's just had the privilege of working with you, thank you. Thank you. Your passion shines through, and Erica and to the board, again, thank you for the wonderful work that you do to support the work of our interim superintendent. Friends, it is my great joy to introduce our very, very special guest on this evening. Ms. Kristen Wynn is the State Literacy Director for the Mississippi Department of Education. Kristen is committed to ensuring equitable access for all students to effective literacy instruction, highly qualified teachers, and highly qualified instructional materials. Her experience in the classroom includes teaching first and second grade, as well as serving as a kindergarten through fifth grade intervention specialist. She's also spent several years as a new teacher mentor. Ms. Wynn previously served as a literacy coach for the Mississippi Department of Education, a regional literacy coordinator, an assistant state literacy coordinator, and currently serves as the state literacy director, where she has worked diligently to improve literacy outcomes of schools and districts across the state of Mississippi. She is the co-creator of several literacy professional development trainings for educators aligned to the science of reading. During the 2016-2017 school year, she co-produced the MDE's Literacy Focus of the Month in Action instructional videos featuring literacy coaches and students in Mississippi classrooms. During the 2017-2018 school year, she began working with coaches to increase the rigor and consistency of writing instruction in kindergarten through sixth grade classrooms through the development and implementation of writing galleries. Currently, she serves as a member of the Mississippi Reading Panel, the Higher Ed Literacy Council, and the Governor's Task Force for Teacher Preparation in Early Literacy Instruction. Those are just a few things about her on her bio, but I want to tell you our guest for tonight and our speaker is perhaps my greatest shero. I am personally proud this evening because I have the deep privilege of introducing my older yet younger looking sister. I've known her all my life. And if I'm honest, I have always looked up to her. And I'm proud. I am proud to join with her in leading this movement of literacy and justice for all of our children, and look forward to the many lives that will be changed through these efforts. Who would have thought two kids from Mississippi would be here together, making our parents proud? I'm so proud of you. And friends, I invite you now to join me in welcoming my sister and our very special guest, Ms. Kristen Wynn, State Literacy Director, K through 12, Mississippi.
So I have lots of stories I can tell as the older, more wiser sister. But we'll save those for a later date. So I am really excited to be here with you all this afternoon. Earlier today, during our luncheon, I had the opportunity to meet with some of your state leaders and some of your organizations that are supporting the literacy work here in Atlanta. We have done a lot of different things in Mississippi, and I'll get the slides up in just a few. But I do want to continuously encourage you all, because in 2013, we were where you are now. And although we've made significant gains in literacy, we still have our foot on the gas. One thing that I shared with the group earlier today is that we often hear about the Mississippi miracle, and that does something to me. When I hear that, it kind of makes me cringe because of the fact that it was never a miracle that our children learned how to read. It was through a lot of hard work, a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and we are still running this Mississippi marathon with lots of strength and a lot of endurance. And until we have 95% of our kids reading on grade level or above, then we are not stopping under my watch. And when you look at that and look at the number of students that we have, and Florida looked at those numbers, that's less than 1% of kids. And we're trying to push all of our kids to be able to learn to read and read at or above grade level. So we are continuously working hard in Mississippi, but this is not something that can't be done, because it can be done in your schools if you keep that sense of urgency that you have right now about it. And we've tried to keep that sense of urgency for the past 10 or 11 years. Okay? So I just want to share with you some things that we've done in Mississippi around literacy. I just want to talk to you just for a few moments about where we were in 2013 when it comes to literacy. So this was the state of Mississippi in 2013. We were an F in quality counts K-12 education. We were 50th in the state overall, in the nation. We were 50th in the nation overall. Our graduation rate was we were only graduating about 75% of our students. On NAEP, which is our National Assessment of Educational Progress, our students were functioning a whole grade level behind the rest of the country, right? And then on top of that, we had one of the largest honesty gaps in the country, which means that our state assessment was not as rigorous as the NAEP assessment. We were thinking as a state that our students were actually doing better than they actually were. And when we looked at NAEP results, NAEP was telling a very different story than our state assessment was telling. Okay? Next slide. So I shared with the group earlier today that there was a term that was coined from our surrounding southern states at the time in 2013. It was "Thank God for Mississippi," because we were at the bottom, which made every other state around us look a little bit better. So the light was on us and not necessarily on them. So in 2022, this is our landscape currently. We've gone from an F to an overall C-. In quality counts, our national ranking is 35th. However, on the NAEP fourth grade reading, we've gone from 50th to 21st in the nation. And we work really hard to continuously improve our graduation rate from 75% of students graduating college and career ready to 88% of our students, and that number continuously increases over the years. All right. So I want to try to break down these numbers just a little bit more, because knowing your overall ranking is one thing, but really looking at your subgroups and looking at the students who make up your state is something we like to look at in Mississippi, because we want to dig into and see who those students are. I need to know faces, I need to know names, I need to know where you're coming from as far as the communities, the school districts, all of that. So when we look at national rankings and Mississippi rankings, overall our students are 21st, our white students are 11th in the country, our Black and Hispanic students rank number 5 in the country, and our free and reduced lunch students rank number 2 in the country. So our efforts in literacy far exceeds just focusing on the whole. We're looking at all children. We're looking at our subgroups of children. And I want to talk to you just for a moment about some strategies that we took to get to this point. And our strategies are centered around prevention and intervention. And yes, Mississippi has an early literacy policy, just as you do in Georgia, but a policy is only as good as its implementation. You can have the policy all day, but if you don't have the legs to put on that policy, or the group of people that push that policy into implementation, then it's only just a piece of paper. Next slide. So these are our pieces of legislation in Mississippi that we have. We have our Early Learning Collaborative Act that was developed in 2013 at the same time as our Literacy-Based Promotion Act. This brought pre-K, universal pre-K, to the state of Mississippi. Our early learning collaboratives are collaboratives. We have 37 of them currently that are placed in our underserved communities. And our early learning collaboratives initially started to outperform our regular pre-K programs. So that is one thing that we really push in Mississippi, is the prevention part by starting them really early with interventions. Our Literacy-Based Promotion Act came into play in 2013. That is our early literacy policy. It eliminated social promotion. However, the goal of that policy is to ensure kids are reading at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And there are really detailed components about how we do that, but I'll show you in just a moment how we implemented that particular policy. Another is our kindergarten readiness assessment. So our kindergartners that enter public school in Mississippi, they take a readiness assessment at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year to determine readiness and growth. Our kindergarten students typically enter kindergarten lower than we expect them to a lot of times, but when they leave kindergarten, on average, they are on the trajectory to be proficient by 3rd grade. So they're leaving kindergarten well prepared, and we can measure that. Another piece of legislation is our dyslexia legislation. Our kindergartners, on top of taking the assessment, the K-readiness assessment, we screen all of our kindergartners in the spring of kindergarten and in the fall of 1st grade with a dyslexia screener. Our dyslexia legislation also includes scholarships as well as grants that can be given to schools to hire therapists and other resources needed to ensure those students get the services that they need as well. All right? So how do we do this? So we have 6 really key strategies in our implementation. And although this is state level strategies, and as you can tell, we are a very hands-on state at the state level. A lot of times the DOE is not this hands-on, but we are, because the majority of us that are in this work, we are vested in our public schools. I have 3 children, and all of my children go to public schools in Mississippi except the baby. And so I want the best for my children, so I also want the same education for the children in my state. I want them to receive the same type of services and support that my children receive. And so our strategy is, again, around prevention and intervention. So we have educator training at all levels. That means we train pre-service teachers, we train ed prep professors, we train SLPs, we train special education teachers, we train leaders, because what we're finding is our teachers know what to do. And a lot of times our leaders are the ones that hold us back. So making sure that our leaders understand the importance of the science and what the science tells us how children learn how to read. We have coaches. You can do all the training you want, but if you don't have the coaches that are side by side working with teachers to really implement and show them what does this look like with the students that I have in my classroom, then a lot of times we go to training as teachers and we put the information right back on the shelf because we have no one helping us work through that and utilize that. So we invest in coaches. Our coaches are placed in our lowest performing schools in Mississippi. We have early identification, and I spoke to you about our kindergarten readiness assessment, but I also have within our policy, we screen our kindergarten through 3rd grade students 3 times a year with an approved screener list. So we have 6 approved screeners that we approve at the state level, and we reimburse schools for those screeners. They send us their data. And so what I tell parents oftentimes is that in Mississippi, we know who's reading and who's not reading by 3rd grade. It's not a surprise, and it shouldn't be a surprise to you, because your child has been screened 12 times before they make it to 3rd grade. So we know what to do. We know who is at risk. We know who we need to provide the additional support to. Then we have a very robust parent communications plan in Mississippi. At the state level, we host meetings like this, 12 every year. We start in the fall. We don't wait till the springtime. We start in the fall very early. And we partner with districts, and we host open forums for our parents to come and ask questions. We walk them through the policy. We help parents advocate for their students. We tell them the questions that they should ask. We tell them the services that their students should receive under our early literacy policy. We are very transparent with our parents because we want them to have a voice. voice. A lot of times our parents don't have, they don't understand all of the educational jargon. So we have to make it where our parents can understand and digest that information and be back into schools to advocate for their students. We also have, and I'll show you shortly, our Strong Readers, Strong Leaders website. We created this page specifically for parents. It has activities from birth to 5th grade that cover the 5 components of reading, things that parents can do with the things that they have at home. And I'll tell you a funny story. I test this with my mom and my children. I even test this with my grandmother. So to see if she could do some of the activities that we had listed, because our parents sometimes, and Kevin and I can attest to this, our mom and Ashley's mom, they have our children. So I wanted to make sure that my mom could pull this up and do some of the activities. And if she can do it without having an education background, then I know we were on the right track to making sure that parents, we had the information that was not over their heads or made them feel any kind of way, that they were able to do things at home to help their children learn to read. And then we have individual reading plans. So I mentioned earlier that our students are screened 3 times a year. We don't just stop at screeners. Screeners tell us who has the fever, but it doesn't tell us the medicine or the diagnosis or any of that. It just says who's walking in my building with a fever. And so our law also requires diagnostic assessments and individual reading plans. So if schools or students are identified as being at risk or having that fever, we go straight to developing them an individual reading plan as early as kindergarten. And parents are included in that planning process, and then that plan follows that child until that deficit is remediated, okay? And then our other strategies is making sure our students have access to knowledge-building, high-quality instructional materials, making sure all of our students have access, equitable access to grade-level content. We don't want the grade-level text and content to be watered down for our students. We want them to have access to rich, complex text and knowledge-building topics because we understand the importance of oral language development and language comprehension and how that impacts their reading comprehension. So we really have a really robust movement, I'll call it a movement right now, on ensuring our students have access to high-quality instructional materials that is aligned to the science of reading. And this is my contact information. If you have any questions, again, I am so excited to be here to share any information that I have or to answer any questions that you may have about some of the work that we've done in Mississippi. Again, I really want to reiterate this. Keep your foot on the gas. Keep pushing. Keep the sense of urgency. This is so important. This is important work for your communities, but not only for your communities, for your state as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Dr. Ryan, if you would come up. Friends, at this time, we're going to just have a brief conversation between Dr. Ryan Lee James, who is the Chief Academic Officer for the Atlanta Speech School, the Director of the Rollins Center for Language and Literacy, and its Cox campus, between Ryan and Kristen. So we're excited about this conversation, after which we will have a moment of Q&A for each of you.
So, thank you, Kristen. I sent my colleagues a couple of messages while you were presenting and said how we need to come and visit you so we can learn more from what Mississippi has done. And there's been a lot of conversation. You talked about it a little bit when folks talk about the Mississippi Miracle, and we have talked about I know with Atlanta Public School leadership, but also just statewide about what y'all have done in Mississippi. So because this conversation really for community members and families, can you just start by telling us a little bit more? You touched on the family communication plan, but a little bit more about how communities, so Dr. Battle said this is something for all of us to do. How are communities and families actively engaged in moving forward the Mississippi literacy efforts?
Got it now?
There you go.
Okay. So yeah, that's a great question. So I mentioned we host the 12 meetings every year. And that kind of started back when we initially started because we got a lot of press about this law. And so we wanted to get out in front of the press and in front of getting the information out to the community, because a lot of times what typically happens is when you have this policy and you're making change or change starts to happen, then people start saying things this way and saying this is happening this way. And so we wanted to have the clear message about what we were doing and what was about to happen in the schools as far as instruction changing, as far as what we've done in the past that had not worked. And so one other thing that we do is we not only host these at the state level, but if a district calls, if a community calls, if a church calls, I have done these presentations to parents in churches. So whomever calls, we send someone out. So our coaches are from a lot of our communities in Mississippi, so they have connections. So if a community knows that a coach is near or a coach is in a school, they reach out to them. So we try to be not only visible, but be accessible to community. And we invite, if some of our legislators, our Black Caucus, they have events in their communities, and we go and we speak. The thing about this is when you start this work, there are a lot of unanswered questions, and a lot of people get uneasy about things. But if you're clear and very transparent about what you're trying to do, a lot of times the community will buy in, the community will understand. And if you're clear about what you're going to do, the plan that you have, and then really educate them. Take the time to educate parents about the science. A lot of times in our slides and in our presentation, we talk about the simple view. We talk about Scarborough's rope. We talk about things that as educators we know, but parents may not know, and sometimes we withhold that information from them because we don't think that they can digest that information, but they can, and they want to, because at the end of the day, I don't know not one parent that does not want their kid to be able to read or want the best for their child.
So with that, can you tell us, I think there's just a lot of just not clarity in the community about why the science of reading, why structured literacy. Can you just tell us what that is for people who are not totally clear about why this methodology and why now?
Yes. So back to my first slide, the state of Mississippi in 2013. We had what the majority of the country was using was balanced literacy, whole language approach to teaching reading. One of the most ineffective approaches to teach students how to read. But we bought into the approach because children had a lot of books. So we made the assumption that we put all of these books and this love for literature in front of kids that they would just automatically learn how to read. And what we have to get parents to understand is that's not the way reading works. That students come to us, language is biologically primary, which means language starts in the womb. Kids are gonna come to school with some form of language, they are. But reading has to be taught. You have to teach me how to get the words off the page. That's not something that just automatically happens. So what the science has been around for decades, a long time, and the scientists, they've known and been working in silos. But the field of education, our job as educators, as researchers, as leaders, is to take that science and move it and pull it and take the research and put it into practice for our teachers, but also for our parents. So with the other approach that we were using, and in 2013, you saw our data, we were 50th. That approach gets about half, maybe 60% of kids reading. The thing about it is, what we're telling ourselves is, it's okay for me to only have 6 out of 10 of my kids reading. That's not okay. That's not okay anywhere. So, and ever. But then think about this, and this is what I tell superintendents all the time, that say, okay, but it's working for some. Some is the key. 6 out of 10, maybe. But what if that, for those students, when we're looking at 6 out of 10, what if one of those were your children or my children? Now it hits it a little differently. And we have been okay with just the bare minimum for students, and it has gotten us to where we are as a country, to only 30-some% of our kids are reading basic or below, or just at the basic level. And so we have to be okay with taking a bold stance and saying, gone are the days that we're using something that gets some reading. We want all students to be able to read. So we have to have those, we have to know what the scientists have known for a very long time. And we have to take that information and make it and put it into digestible chunks for all of our students to learn how to read.
So another question is around mindset shifts. So in our state, like you acknowledged, we have House Bill 538 now that Governor Brian Kemp signed last summer 2023, and Senate Bill 48, our dyslexia legislation that I think was signed maybe end of 2019. And we know that in order to even be able to accurately identify kids who are struggling or who have reading disabilities, we have to have given them some explicit, systematic, and effective instruction.
Absolutely.
So we recognize that as really the starting point to even be able to identify kids who are truly struggling because of neurobiological differences.
Yes.
So we have our legislation, and there's still many teachers, many school leaders in our state who are not convinced. Mm-hmm. And so how did y'all go about that? I think what we see is we have people saying, okay, all right, we'll do it. And then, like you said, when you're gone from the building, people will go back to doing what it is they're comfortable doing. So how do you tap mindset?
Yeah. So with us, we had a lot of resistance at first, and you're going to experience the resistance. And I say to that, again, keep your foot on the gas and know that you're going to face the opposition. So instead of trying to battle that, we said, we'll prove ourselves. We'll prove it. So what ended up happening is we had some of our larger districts, more affluent districts, say, hey, what we've been doing is working. We're not changing. Okay, that's fine. So we went into our other districts and we really worked with them. Our coaches work in our lowest performing districts. We, every day we were in there, we were giving them the training, we were helping them with implementation, all of that. So when the first set of kindergarten readiness assessment came out, those schools outperformed the other schools. So now light bulbs are going off like, wait a minute, hold up. This is not supposed to happen. And so now it's like, well, what did you do? Well, we've been trying to tell you all along what we did works for all kids and not just some. We're not all about some. We're all about all. And so that got us a lot of buy-in because no one, although we don't want to make it this competition with districts and superintendent, it is. It's a competition. and they're looking at that. And so when you can get them to see and understand that evidence-aligned practices are important and they help all students, then you're more apt to have the buy-in there. So we took the approach of, we will take the willing. Let's work with the willing first. And when we worked with the willing and we start seeing the results of the willing, then those that were hesitant, they came on board. Now, it's not to say that we still don't have everyone on board, but now we're at the point where our larger school districts that were very hesitant at first are leading the efforts. They are the loudest at leading the efforts. So it's getting everybody to try to march to the same beat, and I'll say get in formation. So you're trying to get everybody in formation.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I think when it comes to where we are, I think just statewide that we're very much in that place. And I think our state leaders, I don't know if you had a chance to meet with Amy Denty earlier today.
We've met in the past.
Okay,
yes. So
she's our you
yes.
here.
Yes.
So I do believe that we're going to be headed in that direction under her leadership. But good to hear your response on keeping our foot on the gas.
Keep your foot on the gas.
Okay, so a quick question about the individualized reading plans.
Yes.
Our state legislation also calls for individualized reading plans for students who are identified by the screener as at risk. I don't think our legislation, somebody can correct me, requires us to implement diagnostics, and so that's something we need to be looking at. But with the individualized reading plans, I also know that Atlanta Public Schools has that as a part of their policy.
Yes.
How do y'all track and manage that? It seems like a big undertaking.
Right.
So two-part question. How do y'all track and manage that for potentially many, many students?
Right.
And then how do y'all communicate regularly with families around the progress that kids are making or not on their individualized plans?
Yeah. So with the individual reading plans, again, that's a part of, so I'll say this, and I didn't say it earlier. Our policy has a retention piece. So we have a third grade retention assessment in our policy. And our parents are well aware of that piece. Well, to get some of the good cause exemptions, then districts are required to have certain amount of paperwork, or certain interventions have to be there and documented, that they've given these the interventions to the students, the supports and services that they need. So your first question, when we give the screeners, the districts have to choose from, for K-3, they have to choose off the approved list. To get reimbursed, we reimburse districts at the state level for those screeners. To get reimbursed, you have to send me your data. So I know right now, I can look at the data, the spreadsheet that we have, and see if X district has 300 or 400 kids that are reading 2 and 3 grade levels below. I can see that. And I can go to X district and say, I need to see your individual reading plans. Or the team that we have that looks at those. They go into districts. A lot of times our coaches look at them. A lot of times our coaches help with the development of those plans, or help them form the teams and make sure that they don't leave out key players on the team or the parents with those. So we try to monitor them that way. If you're flagged when you're sending your data to us at the state level, and it's flagged that you have a significant amount of kids that are reading 1 to 2 grade levels below, then we may go into a monitoring visit and see and provide you the support. We try not to be a compliance arm. We try to be a real support arm. And I think over the years, because we've been so transparent in trying to help and not slap people on the wrist all the time, and really trying to get in and say, okay, we understand that you may not understand, but we're going to help you through this process, then they are more apt to invite us in and help them through the process, and let us help them manage this and help them show them how it should be implemented there. So that was the first question. Now tell me the second. Oh, the progress monitor.
And communicating
and the
with families.
communication.
Yep.
Yes. So right now we have, well, prior to, with the individual reading plan, they're screened, the diagnostics are administered, and then the plan is developed to indicate the types of supports that students should receive. Now, our law indicates that parents have to be notified in writing quarterly. So that's not 3 times a year, that's quarterly. So we've set that to look like 6 to 8 weeks. We're checking in with parents to say, okay, let's come back to the table. This is where Kristen is now. She was here, we've put in place these really strong interventions that have the phonemic awareness, the phonics, and the connected text. And then we bring you back and say, this is where she's going, or this is where she's headed. That has to be done quarterly. That's not something that we wait to do. A lot of times sometimes districts do it monthly to bring them back. Again, that individual reading plan follows that child until the deficit is remediated.
So I think I just have time for one more question. Okay, so then in that case, another 2-part question, what would you say has been the greatest challenge in the statewide implementation? And what is something that y'all are continuing to just like iterate on and, try to improve?
So in Mississippi, we took a knowledge first approach so what that means is we did not throw instructional materials in front of our teachers. We did not just go try to find materials and say, if you use the best materials out there from the for-profit companies, your kids are going to make these gains. We took a knowledge first approach. So we trained teachers and leaders in the science first so that they would have the knowledge to go and choose what was best, or if something was placed in front of them, they know how to modify it and utilize it to get the greatest gains out of it from their students. So when we initially started this, we had probably in 2017, we did a survey. There were 87 different programs. So we did not start with the materials first. We started with a knowledge first approach. And so now I'll say our challenge is getting the materials now in the hands of teachers. So we have it's like you peel an onion back and then here's another layer and then here's another layer and here's another layer and then like, oh my goodness, here's another layer. So we realized that we had all of these instructional materials that were disjointed and teachers were having to craft their own lessons and all of those things. So we went back and we have an approved intervention list that's vetted at the state level. We have high quality instructional materials. We only have 5 because we don't like to give a whole lot of choice, because when you have 50, then we start stacking things on top of each other and teachers become frustrated. So we give 5, and what we've found in really talking about that is we're trying to give kids equitable access to the content. So if you're in District A or you're District B, you have access to quality text. You have access to the decodable text, the foundational skills you need, the materials that you need. So the kids are on an even playing field because they have that access. That's where we are now with that implementation. One thing we do at the state level is that we don't do vendor professional development. We create our own with the materials because we want to show teachers, you've learned this information about the science. Now let's look at these materials and see how that lines up to what we know. So again, we continuously push this knowledge first approach and not say we have these materials that we can put in front of kids. It becomes a silver bullet. So that's what we are now with our initiative, really pushing our instructional materials, but also expanding what we're doing in K-3 to our adolescent literacy space, because we know literacy instruction does not stop in 4th grade or 3rd grade, that our 8th grade scores are just holding steady. They don't look anything like our 4th grade scores. So now we're having to go back and see, how do we give this same type of training to our middle school teachers to work on the adolescent literacy or in the adolescent literacy space.
Well, Kristen, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
We could not be more grateful. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have time for a few questions. If anyone, you'd like to step right up, Audrey? Okay, step right up.
Good evening. I'm glad to be here and listening to you. My name is Audrey Reese. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit called Star C. We provide wraparound services to affordable and workforce housing communities in Atlanta, and our services do include free on-site after school for elementary kids, as well as summer camp. So my question to you is, how have you engaged with the after school and summer school programs, because we know that out of school time is very important?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So we, at the state level, we receive $15 million in funding every year. State funds, these are not federal funds. The majority of our funds go to coaching, the human resource, because we want them. But also, we give grants to districts each year for summer reading programs. And so we have a high dosage tutoring initiative right now that we're doing in the state. We have a playbook. So with that high dosage tutoring, we try to engage our districts and our communities or our organizations that host those after school programs. We try to help them and guide them in making sure the services and supports align to the science. Because what we don't want to do is be counterproductive in our after school programs, doing something completely different than what kids are getting during the day. So we want to make sure that we align and teach those folks that are offering the services for summer schools and after schools about the science as well. So it's kind of like knitting a sweater and unraveling it. If we don't align all of our supports, then we're kind of taking one step forward and 3 steps back. So we want to make sure that we engage those folks. We have a initiative called Mission Acceleration, and we use our CTE students in some of our districts to provide tutoring and after-school supports to our K-3 students. And we train those students in the science of reading, and they utilize our program. So we try to align everything to what we do in around the science.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other? Step right up. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ishay Collins. I serve on the Atlanta Board of Education along with my colleagues. One question I do have, because we are doing a deep dive, and I know Dr. Battle and team have shared with you about our literacy policy. So what we're experiencing when we look at our data as we move to our student outcome-focused governance, we're seeing huge gaps in our subgroups. And so we have our students that are high-performing, and then our subgroup students, there's a huge gap. My question to you is, what has been this work and your implementation strategy for what you're seeing in the Mississippi Delta, where there's still student population, still school, like Quitman County and some of those counties in those areas where those students are still at that 29% reading level and above? Like, what are some of the spaces of your work that is helping to address the subgroups that are still having those challenges?
Good question. And you must know some people from Mississippi, or you're from Mississippi. You named some counties, Quitman County. So that's a great question. So one thing with our Delta region of the state, we push out a lot of supports. So again, I mentioned our coaches serve our lowest performing schools. And so that does not mean that we rank order all of our elementary schools in Mississippi. So no one is off the list. You just fall in a different place on the list. And so we provide coaching supports there. We do that same 6-step strategy. We just do it down at the district and school level. And a lot of times, and I shared with the group earlier, we have a higher teacher turnover rate in Mississippi. We do. We have a lot of non-certified teachers that are in front of our students. That's across the country. We're not exempt from having that. But one thing that we try to do is train whoever is in front of those students. And we try to give them the amount of support that we would any certified teacher. So we try to make sure that the person that's standing in front of students, whether you're certified or you're non-certified, we give you the same amount of training and we give you the same amount of coaching support. Some of our districts, as you mentioned, one county, what we try to do is we take a team in and create a literacy plan for the district. So we have our state level literacy plan that aligns goals and action steps. And I am an action step, next step type of girl. So, you know, we're going to talk about it, but we're going to do something about it. So we'll go in with the team over the summer and create a whole literacy plan for that team. And then work with them to provide the on-site professional development for them, as well as the coaching and the supports in whatever area they may need.
Any other questions? Yes.
Too short. All right, my name is Amelia Murriel. I'm a parent and also a teacher, but I'm here more as a parent tonight. How did you address teachers that already had, or did you have teachers with already on their path with a lot of knowledge with structured literacy that had already done practicums or started working on other work? How did you differentiate your PD? So my fear here in Atlanta, and we're sort of a mecca for dyslexia somehow. So there's a lot of our teachers that have already put in a tremendous amount of work. And I worry if we just blanket PD, like no matter where you are, you're all gonna do this very basic thing, regardless of if you've already done it. And I also worry, did you look into like having a database of who you already had trained? Because we haven't done that work either. So.
Yes, so great question. So with our training, so what we've most recently done to address that is, so initially we've trained since 2013 probably 20,000 teachers in the science of reading, and we have 32,000 teachers in Mississippi. So we've trained 20,000, and probably those were the numbers 2 years ago. So what we did was we went back, and now we have levels of training. So if you complete one course, whether it's the practitioner course or the leader course, you unlock 2 other courses. So you unlock a structured literacy course. Maybe you've gone through the anchors. You've talked about the baseline of what you need to know about the science. We've talked about those things. And so you end up unlocking a different course that's at a different level. So this may be a course where you need some interventions to do with your struggling students. So you unlock that course, or you do a practicum where you can become a dyslexia interventionist on the practicum level, or you unlock the writing course, because reading and writing go hand in hand. So we try to have it where there are levels of courses that our teachers can unlock. With those that have been trained, one thing that we're seeing is, and a lot of people have this misconception, is that the science of reading just focuses on phonics. There's another whole side when we're looking with language comprehension and oral language development. And so we make sure that we look at the whole, everything that contributes to building a skilled reader for students to be able to comprehend. So we're trying to move away from the mindset that the science is just about phonics and offer other training opportunities. We do regional trainings that is another way to engage our educators in training.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Carol Lofton. I'm the head of school of the Skank School and executive director of ReadSource. I'm wondering what Mississippi has been doing in terms of pre-service teaching. So we're talking a lot about we've got to get in there and train all of these teachers. What we're not talking about is how our teachers are receiving education as they're moving through the university systems. Could you speak a little bit about that?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'm going to go back to 2013 when we started this work. Our governor was dead set on having 75 coaches. We went through, well, I wasn't a part of the application process, but they went through 600 applicants. And there were only 23 of us that walked in the State Department that year. So that was a red flag. Like, we are not providing our pre-service teachers with what they need. They are not day one ready to come out of our pre-service or our institutes of higher learning ready to teach reading. We do have in Mississippi what's called a Foundations of Reading assessment that our pre-service teachers have to pass to get their 5-year license. So when that assessment came into place, then our professors, and a lot of times they are the hardest people to deal with, because they're tenured, and I have been doing this the same way for a very long time, and now you're telling me to do something different. And so when that assessment came out, we worked with our ed prep programs to restructure our structured literacy, our early literacy 1 and 2 courses. So now we have what's called our higher ed literacy council that are some of our professors. They work with us. We train them. So the training that we pay for teachers, we open, when all for us, training means all. So I pay for pre-service teachers to go through our training. I pay for the ed prep professors to go through those trainings. We offer those trainings to them. Any of our regional training, they are more than welcome to come to, and they do. They really partner with us. One thing that we've had to try to do with them to kind of get them on board is we did this past year an award. Everybody likes to be celebrated. So when we only were able to celebrate 2 of our universities, that sent up a red flag too. How do I get this banner that y'all are giving out at the state level? How am I celebrated for my ed prep program? So we try to think of creative, innovative ways to get people on board. The National Council for Teacher Quality, they put out their reports. So one of our universities was an F on that report. That sends a red flag because the rest of them were A's. So, and on the exemplar list. So we're heading in the right directions, but you have to hit this from all sides. And you cannot leave out your ed prep professors, nor can you leave out your pre-service teachers.
How you doing?
How are you?
Akeem Williams, education advocate. I just want to say thank you all for being here tonight, as literacy is important to us in Atlanta. My question is the quality index of the students' outcomes as they matriculate through the Mississippi school districts. How does that, is there a measurement for that? And as it relates to like housing, healthcare, as we know that literacy sometimes does improve those outcomes due to the, I guess, the stigma of, hey, I know how to read now, so I'm going to take care of my body more, or I'm going to go out and get a better job. Have you all seen any type of comparisons?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have seen changes in communities, I would say that. We have, that measure is something that we're still working to measure. I can't say that I can have something solid that measures that, but what we measure is, you know, what's happening, how we transforming schools and districts and communities. But that's something we need to further explore because we are one of the poorest states in the nation. We are, you know, our health care is subpar, it's not where it needs to be. But we don't, I'll say this from this angle, we don't use those things as excuses either not to be able to get our students to where they need to be. But that's an area we need to further explore as a service.
All right, you'll be our last question for the evening. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sue Cosson. I'm a APS parent of 2 kids here, and I'm also an education professor. What I wanted to ask about, first, thank you for centering equity and serving historically marginalized youth at the heart of the work. In a similar vein, my question is about multilingual learners. We know multilingual kids are neurologically different because they're learning differently. What can you add, or what do you recommend? And I'm imagining the population of English learners in Mississippi is dramatically smaller than ours here in Georgia. So what insights might you have in that regard?
So our population is growing, just as the rest of the country's population is growing in other states and other cities. So what we've done with those Literacy Focus of the Month in action videos, we had some videos specific to our bilingual and multilingual learners. Things that teachers may not even think about as little small things that they can do in their classroom, like the 1-minute conversations and the oral language development activities that they can do. So we have a whole series of videos just to help teachers really understand the additional things that they have to do for our multilingual learners. In addition to that, we have our EL coordinator that really goes out in districts and do specific trainings around that, and all of the trainings, again, are aligned to the science of reading. There's one other thing that I just went completely blank that I wanted to tell you that we had, but I can't remember now. When I remember, I'll come back to it. But we really try to make sure that we address those things early. So again, it's the same concept. It's the prevention and intervention, making sure that we give them the resources and the interventions and the supports that they need. Not only the students, but also their parents. And oh, I know what I was going to say. Back to our higher quality instructional materials. One thing that we talk about with districts with that is that you're looking at improving the vocabulary of your multilingual learners when we have those knowledge-rich curriculum. Background knowledge and vocabulary are two sides of the same coin. And so when we're trying to build that with students, we have to really, those materials allow us to really focus on improving that vocabulary, and we're seeing them doing better at a faster rate because they have that access. Again, it's a knowledge-first approach. However, making sure that the materials teachers have are there in hand and they know how to utilize them effectively.
Thank you.
Okay, I said that was the last question, but I have one. That will be the last question. So, how is this financed? Because you're doing this statewide, and we're talking about Atlanta right now, right?
Yeah.
So you said Mississippi is a poor state. Hey, guess Georgia's got what? How many? $20 billion sitting in the coffers, just sitting, collecting interest. So how are you financing this so we can figure that out?
Absolutely. So our first few years, we received $9 million in state funds. So our state legislators, they graciously give us $9 million. They said, here's the $9 million, do what you need to do with it. Okay. So then we started to see the results. They've given us $15 million every year. So I operate right now our literacy efforts off of a $15 million budget. Now, my counterparts in other states have hundreds of millions of dollars. We do what we can with what we have.
Well, you're doing a lot.
We do the best that we can. And I was telling Ryan earlier, I still go out and do trainings. Like, I'm in the school. I don't go and sit in the office all day. I'm in the schools because I cannot change what's happening in schools if I don't put my hand on it and know what's happening. Yes. So I'm in schools. I train our superintendents. I train our principals. I train our teachers. You see me out in front of parents doing the same thing that I'm doing now. And so I think that's really important that we don't lose sight, even when you get to a certain level, that you are so disconnected from the work. You have to continuously be connected to the work. And so we try to, in Mississippi, we do a lot with the little.
Well, I want to give you, let's give her a round of applause. Because, listen, if Mississippi can do it, y'all, ATL can do this. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And I just want to say thank you to Dr. Ryan, I want to say thank you to Kevin, to Comer, and all of your support. You are really the engine. And I know you're modest about it, but I just remember when I met Comer, you know, we were doing some literacy things that we thought we were doing something. And he called me up and he said, Nancy, that's nice, but that's not gonna move the needle. He said, we've gotta get serious about this work, and I thank you for that. Thank you so much. So thank each and every one of you. We need you. Thank you for coming out tonight. And this is not the end. We will keep pushing. And I'm gonna let Kevin close this out.
Good night, everyone. Be safe. Again, you will hear from us soon. Let's keep this movement going. Literacy and justice for all. Thank you so much.
And I think people hearing more and more about what can't